Good morning. It is Tuesday morning, March 30th, and it's our regular board meeting for Franklin County. I call the meeting to order, and please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, with that, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of March 2nd, March 9th, and March 16th. Commissioners, is there any additions or corrections? Consensus of the board to approve the minutes. Okay, hearing no objections, they are approved. Next, we'd like to go to the certification of appreciation. Mr. Tom Wilson. On behalf of Franklin County, I'd like to express our gratitude for your faithful service as Pest Control Board Coordinator from March 16th of 2001 through April 8th of 2021. Your contributions to the county and your years of service have been invaluable. Please accept this certificate of appreciation for your dedication and professionalism. We hope you just know how much we respect and have valued you as a colleague. You will be missed at Franklin County. At this point, I'd like to ask Sam or Mike if they would like to say anything. Come on up to the mic. Right here.
Oh, okay. And I've worked with Tom. He's been my boss for the last long time, 13 years. I have lots of stories. Not many of them I can tell here, but I do have one in particular. We were doing a little test on some ornamental pear trees that's planted back up along Verdon Boulevard and all over. So anyway, we'd put these little bags on them and on each fruit. And then once a week, we'd go through and check these little bags to see, what was happening. One time, me and Jim, the previous inspector, we were checking, it started raining. So me and Jim decided to go have donuts while it was raining. We forgot to call Tom. Anyway, don't think he was happy with us. So the next morning, we get into work, and here we've got a poncho and an umbrella sitting on our desk. So we got the hint. Thanks, Rob.
Anybody else would like to say a word or two? Well, Tom, come on forward here, and I'll present you with the award. I just want to say thank you, sir. I got you for your service. How do you do it? Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. All righty, next on the agenda, we have a presentation from the Assessor's Office presented by Assessor John Rosenoff, Chief Deputy Assessor Piper Mitchell, and Chief Appraiser Nikki Morgan. Please.
Thank you, Commissioners. And this is for you as well as the citizens here in the county and those that are interested. So we have a lot of material to cover, so please take notes. And at the end, we will definitely give you an opportunity to ask any questions. Hopefully, we will answer most of those throughout the presentation. So if you try to ask questions during it, we may have to skip a bunch of the presentation because hopefully we'll have answered that in there. So anyway, myself, Piper Mitchell, our Chief Deputy, and Nikki Morgan will be doing the presentation. Nikki will be presenting from the appraiser side, and Piper from the administrative side of it. So I think it's very important that you hear from them since they oversee those individual departments. So we have an acronym, TEAM, team, and we'll give you a little more definition of that towards the latter part of our presentation. Currently, we're two separate departments and bargaining units within the assessor's office, not just somewhat separated, but there are specific duties that relate to the appraisers versus relate to the administrative department, so much so to where there's even two different union bargaining units. We have the administrative department and the appraisal department, and those are over the employees in there. Robin and Carrie and Amy are in the administration side of it, and on the appraisal side, we have Brian, Fenny, Monica, and Marie. They're not in any political order. They're just how they sit when I walk into the room, so that you know that. Each one of them is overseen by somebody. Piper oversees the administrative department as the chief deputy. Nikki oversees the appraisal department as the chief appraiser. Now, I will say this, having only been in the office for 60 days or minus 1 or 2 of those days, 58 days, these two have been in I have seen coming into the office. Absolutely irreplaceable in their positions. And they have been more than just 100% supportive of me coming in. And I know there was some initial concern public and amongst commissioners of whether or not that would be the case. But I can tell you, they've absolutely stepped forward and been a real blessing to me in those positions. Especially when you consider that they've had 3 assessors in just over 2 years, and they've had to adapt a little bit to each one of them. So that's been a little bit of a challenge for them overseeing their. They'll touch on that a little bit. So in the past 60 days, some things that I have focused on and the team is focused on, and then you'll hear individually on the individual departments. But we've established department core values for the assessor's office. They are published. They're down on our wall. They're down in the back employees room. You're more than welcome to come take a look at them. I think that they are valuable in what makes us who we are and how we treat each other and how we treat the taxpayers and the citizens of the county when they come in. We've implemented our acronym TEAM, and in there I've been able to conduct some staff and management meetings, completed one-on-ones with all the staff, and we've implemented leadership development with the department managers, and a few other things that we've implemented under that we'll cover towards the end. We've established some cross-training requirements for each one of the departments to the degree that we can, with it being 2 complete separate departments within one office. We've reviewed and reassigned some department responsibilities where applicable, where we could do that. We've reviewed the assessor's website, and we're implementing some major changes. You won't see but 1 or 2 on there right now, primarily because it takes a lot of additional support from IS. They have to get around to where they can support us. We're getting some of our people trained to be able to handle some of it. But there's stuff in there that's 15, 16 years old and just outdated. We need to upgrade it and get that going. We began the process for addressing the need for reliable vehicles, and I thank the commissioners for addressing our initial needs on that. We've upgraded the vehicle branding and fleet fuel card systems. We've changed all the signage on the cars. Instead of it just being big letters, they actually now look like county vehicles with the county's emblems. The fleet fuel cards, we've changed that. Instead of tracking individuals, we're tracking the vehicles and the individuals that fuel them up and the mileage on the vehicles. So we can actually keep track of each vehicle's usage of fuel and mileage. We've obtained appointment to the Washington State Association of County Assessors for the Open Space Committee, which for this county is, 85, 90% of the county is under open space. So I actually will be sitting on that committee this year. And we've developed a current use ag and personal property information session that we're going to cover right here. And this we'll be doing on April the 28th at 7 o'clock. We really want to get this information out. We've got flyers that are going out. We've got emails that are going to be going to 100 plus farmers that Piper and Nikki have put together to advise them of it. Now, what we want to cover in this is personal property assessment that deals with farm, ag, and commercial. Because individual property owners they don't have a personal property assessment, but businesses and farmers do. We want to bring them up to date on the auditing that has been done in the past, will continue to be done by the Department of Revenue. Last year, of course, with COVID, there was a lack of that getting out. We want to make sure that the businesses, the commercial businesses and farmers understand how that affects them, how to properly report and be on there being problems. And we don't want to be auditing and have problems. We want to make sure that they're on top of that. Real property assessments, valuation process, we're going to be going over that, explaining how it works, the current use ag and open space under the open space program, and then market and current use values. We've got a tremendous amount of information to provide to the ag community and commercial businesses out. So that will be on the 28th at 7 o'clock. It is going to be on Glade North Road, right out Merrill's Corn area, right next to the ambulance station. The address actually for the building is 12901. It's a huge, large metal building that's like used for storage, seed, other things. We've got access to it. I want to thank Commissioner Didier for all of his efforts on getting that out to the farmers. It will be valuable to them. There's no doubt in my mind that this will be of great value to them going forward on there. An update on the department, then Piper on the administration, and then I'm going to try to tie a nice sweet bow on it for you, give you some more details at the end of that.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for having us and letting us present a little bit about what we do. So, overview of the Appraisal Department. We inspect all at least every 6 years. So it's important to note that everything we do in the assessor's office is according to state statute. So when I list these things, they are WAC for the state of Washington. So that's approximately a year. Another thing to note there would be buildings per parcel. So it's not just 6,000 buildings. Vacant land, some of them are parcels that are improved with multiple buildings. We value all property, land, and buildings at 100% of market value every year, again, according to state statute. So that's approximately 34,000 parcels. It's quite a workload. We administer the valuation of the current use and ag program, including the advisory committee. So note that the point above talked about 100% of market value. There is a state program under the Open Space Act called the Current Use and Ag, which allows the farming value, the current use value of the property to be the taxable value. We measure, sketch, verify characteristics, and value all new construction each year. So in 2020, that amounted to over $263 million in value added to the value for structures added, for structures and new plots, of course. So one thing to note there is the only way for us with this county's growth has been the chief and at times the assessor themselves going out and picking up new construction. It's the only way we've been able to maintain this state statute in the past. In addition to those things, we answer all taxpayer questions regarding the values, providing documentation and market data. There's a good chunk of our year after we send out value notices that's set aside strictly for answering questions, providing the data that we used to come up with the new values. And then, of course, preparing and presenting valuation evidence for the Board of Equalization, which is at the local county level, as well as the state level. So if the decision at the local board is not satisfactory to either party, they have the right to take that then to the state level. Transfers, as well as update property character. So most of the time before you sell your home, you're going to do significant. So we want to know what that property was. Comparable sale, we have the correct property information on it. Also on commercial property, because it could have changed in use, they add, remove walls, and then we don't know unless we go out. In order to do this, we utilize all available resources, including multiple methods of technology in the office and in the field that we use in order to, there's no way we could do it all on paper and bring it back. So part of that is our CAMA system. CAMA just stands for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal Software. So that's where all the valuation actually occurs. It's linked to our cost model, and that's from all of our administration happens in the CAMA software. But we also use Microsoft Excel for advanced stratification and analysis. So even though they're completely separate software programs, we use them together. And then, of course, also the GIS, the Geographic Information System, which is also a position in our administrative team in our office. We couldn't do what we do without them, and what they provide to us is our parcel layers and information on a parcel layer linked to the map that we can use in the field. And then we have to maintain continuing accreditation hours with the state of Washington. So that's just ongoing education in our field in order to maintain accreditation and stay up on all the recent and modern techniques of appraisal. So moving on to achievements, we have measured and walked through all the commercial and industrial property over the last 5 years to verify its use and characteristics. Now this is huge, and it goes with my next point, because in my opinion, we maintain some of the most. You look at commercial listings, you no longer see the appraiser having to go out and measure the building and mark where each building or room is. They simply take our sketch and put it on their listing. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud that our records are used by other entities. And for percentage of growth for the last 20 years, which is huge. So another achievement is that through all the hard work and dedication needed to do all of the points above, we have been able to maintain exceptional audit reports from the Department of Revenue. So they are our oversight agency, and they do audit everything that we do because it is mandated by law. Some of the reports that they do for us are our sales stratification report. So as each sale occurs, it's up to us, like I said, to verify the validity of the sale, register whether it's not been an arm's length transaction, whether it can be used as a comparable sale or not. And that's for our ratio report, which is next, but it's also for the public information. So the ratio study measures our level of assessment. By law, we're required to be at 100% of market value. And of course, that's really difficult to keep up with in a market like ours. So that's just us maintaining accurate data and being very diligent about trying to achieve 100% of market value. And then that goes along also with our current use ratio study. So again, the current use values would be the farm and ag current use valuations, which we also get audited on. Taxpayer requests for reinspection or correction. And this is a big one because I think it's important for any public that's listening and for you guys to remind the public that this is a huge part of what we do. A lot of times when we get a call from people, they're kind of under the assumption that we're going to just defend our values, live or die. But what we want is for the most accurate and equitable information. We want them to be right, whatever that may be. So we reinspect when taxpayers ask, if we deem that it's necessary. When we're out, we're verifying. Finish that basement that I got a permit for. I need you to come look at it. That's easy. Other times it's, the freeway noise is really impacting my ability to enjoy my residential property. So when we're out, we look at all aspects of the property, and we've made valuation corrections when appropriate. Trained 2 new residential appraisers. We've trained 2 experienced appraisers on commercial valuation. And then, as I mentioned before, overcoming the impacts of COVID and elected official turnover can be really hard on morale, but I would like to give kudos to my team. They have maintained all of the requirements, and I would say with excellence. They've gone above and beyond. All right, so for goals going forward, to continue to improve accuracy and equitability, utilizing all available resources with keeping up with the county growth. So of course that goes into staffing. So we just did acquire the new appraiser position that is currently open. We have 2 residential appraisers and one commercial appraiser and another appraiser that is both farm and commercial. So we're looking to fill that other commercial appraiser position. If we are able to do that, we will be able to keep up with everything that we've been doing and will be required to continue to do. Another big part of this will be implementing software called Camma Cloud. It is a field device that works hand in hand with our Camma system. It plugs right in, and it will increase the efficiency of what we do in the field work, and decrease the doubling up on the office to plug everything in. So that's coming down the road. It's being beta tested by another county in Washington State that has our same software vendor. So they're working out all the kinks for us. And to continue to achieve an equitable ratio and good reports from the department. All aspects of valuation. Again, they're our oversight agency, so when they audit, I feel really good when they give us good reports. Field of expertise, along with maintaining employee safety with situational awareness, training, and reliable vehicles for field inspection. So I have to say the 2 vehicles that were approved this year go a long way to keeping our staff safe. North to south, our county is approximately 40 miles. East to west, it's approximately 60. It can take over an hour for an appraiser to drive out to rural locations to do an inspection. So knowing that they will be safe when they're out individually in the field is critical. And I thank you very much. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand you over to Piper.
Okay, again, thank you very much for having us today. So the administrative office has a ton of functions that most people don't know we even do. And a lot of it is behind the scenes. So the first one, and probably the most important, we keep track of all ownership and address on all properties for property tax billing. So in order for the proper owner to get the bill, we have to track all the sales that come in through the auditor's office and excise through the treasurer's office. So it takes all 3 of us to get the proper ownership on parcels. There's an average of 282 ownership transfers per month. And some of those are for multiple parcels. They're not just one owner, one parcel. It also requires a lot of research through the title company, through an attorney's office, whoever handled the transfer. Sometimes they're not real clear cut and dried. We also administer the Senior Citizen and Disabled Persons Tax Relief Program. There's approximately 800 annual applications that the people actually have to come in. We get prescriptions paid for out of pocket. We're not allowed to keep any financial documents. So we have to make very good notes on what we saw. There's a special form we sign that what we attest to we saw, because like I said, the state does not allow us to keep copies. So we approve, maintain, and audit all the applicants annually. So it is a shift to the other taxpayers. So that's what we are charged with, is making sure the appropriate people are on this program, because everyone else pays for what they don't pay. So it's approximately $1 million in tax that gets shifted to the other homeowners. Then we have our personal property department. So all farms and commercial businesses are required by law to list any furniture, fixtures, or equipment used in the operation of their business. And they have to report that annually. So there's 2,700 accounts. And they must file annually. There's from 1 to over 1,000 lines per account. So we have a very good person running the personal property department, and she not only audits, we not only get audited by the Department of Revenue, but she audits as the reports come in from the owner. So if it's a commercial business such as an insurance agency and they mark off all their computers, that prompts a phone call. You know, how are you operating without computer? And they mark. So it takes a lot of diligence on that person's part. And then beyond that, we administer the Open Space Farm and Ag program. So people apply through us, audit through the administrative, and we allow continuances. There's over 3,800 parcels in the program. The continuance is upon transfer of ownership. has to be signed off by the assessor that it's an allowable use to the new owner. They could have a completely different change in what they want to do on that property. If they turn it into a nursery, it doesn't qualify for farm and ag. So we have to send out quite a bit of correspondence to the new owner or the proposed new owner, so we allow it to continue at the time of transfer. We calculate the back tax calculation if it's removed. So removal from the program requires a 7-year back tax to be paid, plus the current year. With interest added, hasn't been in the program 10 years, they pay a 20% penalty. So it can get considerably costly. It's for long-term farm and ag use. It's not for a hobby farmer. It's not for 4-H. It is commercial farm and ag only. We perform audits of the program for compliance, especially under 5. And for the 2021 tax, it shifted over $1.5 billion in value to the other taxpayers in the county. And it shifts through the levy process. So it's not a direct dollar shift. So then we also, in the administrative department, calculate the levies. There are 22 separate taxing entities. So there's 5 fire districts, multiple school districts, which that creates 37 different geographical tax district areas. We also import all building permits from all municipalities so that the appraisers can go out and pick up new construction. There's approximately 235 new building permits per month. We also, the state appraises all what they call utility companies. They cross county lines. So it's Burlington Northern, it's all the airlines, it's the cell phone companies. We import those values and calculate the rail car company percentages. So on the railroad, there's rail cars that are for lease and that they cross our county, so they pay property tax. And we have to percentage it out by what districts they run across in our county. We balance and maintain all those valuations. And then nonprofit exemptions. All the churches, any other nonprofit, they apply through the Department of Revenue to be tax exempt. And we get certification from the department once a year of who is exempt and who is not. We need to report ownership changes to the department because that prompts removal right away until they reapply. We also need to report changes to the Department of Revenue, use changes. We had a old building that was tax exempt that we got a building permit on, and they had changed it to a car audio store. Contacted the Department of Revenue, let them know of the change, and they contacted us back and said the owner said it hadn't changed. We sent them pictures of the new storefront. So it's one of those things we just have to be real diligent so that the proper people are, again, being tax exempt. And then we have our GIS department. We maintain the official county parcel maps by statute. And she processes all land segregations and subdivisions. There was 532 new parcels on average. Most add new rooftops. So any long plat, and we've had many, like you said, we've been the fastest growing county in the state for 20 plus years. We also assist other county offices, elections, planning, anyone that needs a map that shows any characteristics of the property we can help with. We also assist outside agencies, surveyors, title companies, attorneys. They all need our help with what the parcel is currently at so that we can transfer ownership or provide any other service for them. We process the annexations to fix the tax districts, so the right parcels are paying to the right agencies. The other functions, there are many state reports. Railroad leases. The state of Washington entered into agreement with Burlington Northern years ago that we can tax their lessee. They're the only agency that we tax the lessee. Otherwise, we're charged by statute to charge the owner of property. But we have to keep track of the size of the land that's leased, and then we value it. Then there's leasehold accounts. If the owner of the improvement on the land is not the landowner, it has a special account. They get taxed too. Sometimes it's crops, sometimes it's buildings. So anything on port land, or if it's county-owned land and they lease a building, or they build a house on somebody else's land, they get a leasehold account and they pay tax accordingly. Then there's tax roll changes. If the appraisers go out, inspect your home, find out there's a change, the subfloor is rotting out, they enact the paperwork to make that change, and then we push it through to the treasurer. So any change of anything, or destroyed property, or new exemptions, we push those through the treasurer so the proper tax amount is paid. There are 4 employees, including myself, and now I'll pass this over to John. He can finish up.
Certainly give you plenty of opportunity for questions as well. So the whole point of this is to be able to give you an understanding of how independent these two departments have to work and what they do. But when it comes to the administrative department and staffing, like Piper mentioned, there's 4 employees, including herself as the chief deputy. There's over 109 years of combined experience in that department. 2 are eligible for retirement right now, with a 3rd person being eligible for retirement within 12 months. You can't replace that 109 years of experience overnight. It's just not possible. So here's a little history, and I put this here and you'll get hard copies of the presentation, but just for the public so they can see it. There's some key points here. One was the Open Space Taxation Act back in 1970 that went from current 75 increase from 50% to 100% as far as the assessment, which at that point in time definitely had an effect on the levy rates. So some of what I talk about on the levy really is pre-mid 70s going forward where we're lower. And of course, in 2001, where it put on the limit of a 1% monetary aggregate increase over the highest lawful levy year. And that took effect in 2002, along with, of course, that and then any new construction to allow the counties and other taxing entities to be able to raise any taxes. So it did cap that. All of the counties in the state of Washington were required to reevaluate property on an annual basis. Now, Steve Marks had actually saw this coming and started working on this in 2008. I give him huge kudos for getting the office ready for that. And so it was thought that that would have been implemented prior to 2014. It took a little longer, but by the time 2014 came along, this county, the assessor's office, was already had that implemented and was following that procedure. So there was not a huge, big shift in the methodology that the assessor's office was ran. So, and Steve oversaw that. So past to present, from 1971 to 2021, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, the current levy rate is the lowest in over 40 years. Assessed values have gone up, but levy rates have gone down. And that has definitely been an advantage to our taxpayers. The county's assessed values have increased tenfold from 1980 to 2021. That's a doubling every 10 years in the county assessed values. That's growth. And of course, with property values and everything just skyrocketing of what we've seen. County tax collections have increased by more than 20 times since 1971. Population has increased nearly fourfold since then. And the assessor's office, we are currently below 60% staffing the county or any other county office or department in this county. 1971. So in our office had between 9 and 13 employees. With the last week, you approving the opening of the one position, we will be at 11 once that's filled. And that's not much growth. In fact, it's stagnant or going backwards in some ways since 1970, even with the growth that we've seen. So here is just a 20-year Even though we've doubled every 10 years since for the past 40 years on but this is a 20-year curve. So literally 10 years, we are seeing that doubling on the assessed values. So commissioners, here's our needs, not our wants for the assessor's office. Additional office space and equipment to meet adequate current and future staffing levels. And currently, Keith and I have been meeting, some of the staff have met, and hopefully some potential possibilities. And I hope to be able to bring something to you commissioners in the near future, what might be adequate to meet our immediate needs and current needs. So staffing, we have the one open appraiser's position you did. Thank you very much for that. I know Nikki and her staff is just absolutely needing it badly. We have a current need for 2 positions in the administration department to be addressed as soon as possible with additional growth. And I think from what you heard from Piper, you can see all that is on that office with 1 GIS person, 2 staff members, and Piper in the entire front administrative office doing everything that she laid out. And there's even more that didn't get named or on that. Continue to update our vehicle fleet, 2 additional cars for the upcoming budget year and additional budget years to get an 8 to 10 year vehicle rotation. I really believe we'll be more in the 10-year area there. We thank you. Was elated and how do I word it? Relieved at the safety aspect and your thoughts of concern and care for them. It was huge. So team, I mentioned I'd tell you a little bit about our acronym. I don't know who else may have coined it, but I know I coined the team acronym some 30 years ago when I was managing some teams. And what it means is to enhance another member. In our office, our goal is to enhance every single member that's in our office. It could be as simple as a good morning when they come in, have a great evening when they go, answering the phone. If you're at the copy machine and they just printed something on the copy machine and you're over picking yours up, you pick theirs up and walk it by their desk and hand it to them so you haven't got 2 or 3 people going there. It could be where you help fill in on maybe some of the appraiser spots, or you have a heart and understand when there's certain people that may have children and they're sick and they can't make it in. We think about one another and we pass that on then to how we treat the public and the taxpayers. So our goal is certainly that our enhancement affects the entire county, every department, every interaction that we have. That's our goal from ours. So I really like that. Longer than most homes on the market right now. That is an absolute fact. Avocados don't last that long. And these and Palouse Falls picture, open to any questions that you may have of us.
Well, thank you very much for an excellent presentation, the 3 of you. Thank you. And commissioners, questions?
Well, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It clearly lines out exactly what your offices do, and I appreciate that. It's a very complicated office, and for me, it was very informational, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you come visit us, it sure be appreciated to get an advance copy of what you're going to present, because as you're talking on the fly and we're taking notes and formulating questions, it's not as productive as it might be if we could think about it overnight and give you more meaningful questions. But that's just an administrative detail and a request. In talking about the programs for seniors and tax abatement programs, you refer to it as a shift where other people in the county end up picking up the taxes that those seniors don't pay. And then when you got to open space, you talked about it being, you didn't use the term abatement, but in a shift program as well. But it sounded like you were making a distinction about it being levied through something. I didn't catch it all because I was taking notes as you were talking. But is it accurate that when you have an open space abatement program where the land is being used for other than its highest and best use, at its full highest and best use value, the difference between what it actually gets.
That's absolutely correct. The important part to remember is any exemption of any kind, whether it be nonprofit, seniors, or open space.
Okay. The open space reg, it was about 1.1 billion per year that other taxpayers in the county pick up.
Correct.
For those. Okay, before anybody, takes offense to my, well, it's not on assessment. This is the taxable amount. The assessment is reduced as part of the open space, but I'm talking about the taxes that are ultimately. I'm, a believer in the open space concept. I don't want anybody to take my comments as not being supportive of it. It's there for a reason. If farm grounds were taxed at full value, it'd be fewer farms.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be more houses built on really good farm ground. And I'm not advocating that we go that way. So let me just be on the record about that. The other thing is that there are a number of different types of lands and uses other than just farm and ag and forest lands that are eligible for open space. Property I used to own is a National Historic Register property. I never applied for or took open space, but it was eligible, and historic properties are. And I'm sharing this so that people listening to this will know. And there's a variety of others, lands that provide scenic vistas and ways, and you know what they are. So it's not just farm. And
it's important to remember that the open space you apply through the county planning department.
yes. Okay. And so in our assessor's remarks, he showed a slide from 1970 saying there were 9 to 13 people, and we have 11 now. And that was obviously a long time ago, 50 years ago. And the fact that the department is able to do today with 11 people what took 9 to 13 people 50 years ago is, of course, a testament to their commitment and their hard work, but it's also to the fact that we have computers. And that has changed the world in ways we don't have time to discuss. So I don't want to take any credit away from the staff, but Steve Marks was very clear about this. He always talked about the balance between human capital and valuing that human capital, so you didn't just throw a lot of bodies at a problem. If you could find a way for them to do the job faster, cheaper, easier, that benefited everybody from the employees to the taxpayers and everybody in between. And so, yes, it's amazing that they can do as much today as it took that many people 50 years ago. You also made a reference to a chart you put up. It was not up there very long, so I didn't have a chance to really study it, but it was a chart showing assessed values, if I caught it right. And it looked like you were making a correlation between assessed values and the number of people doing the work for that amount of assessed value.
Not directly, no. You take into consideration assessed values because the more complex some of them can be, the more value there is there. There can be more work that is required. Part of it also has to do with the growth, the new construction. All of those assessed values are additional buildings and industrial complexes, residences, all of that stuff increases in order. That's part of the assessed values as well.
Right. So
I certainly agree with you on your computer mode. However, if you compared this county to all the others, even with the technology, we'd have a staff of 18.
Well, and that's what I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to, and that was going to be my closing remark.
Yeah.
But I'll go to it now and then come back to my other question, which is when we've had other departments come to us and say we're short on people, we typically will have HR identify like counties, comparable counties, and do an analysis for us. And if that hasn't been done in recent years, I would encourage you to do that. It's good data.
I have it currently with me.
Good. Okay. And then back to the assessed values chart. Yes, new construction does add to assessed value. And I think it would be more informative if we talked about numbers of properties valued, because you can double your assessed value by simply having market values go up dramatically in a few years. But the number of parcels being assessed really hasn't changed dramatically other than the new construction. So it's not a case of trying to misrepresent or mislead anybody. I just understand it was sort of the shorthand version, but I want people to understand that assessed value can go up dramatically, but it doesn't necessarily change the number of parcels aside from the new.
Yeah, we have had some, and that's why Nikki actually gave big numbers on parcels.
Right. That I'm acknowledging and allowing for new
Right.
construction, especially with our growth.
Yep.
I'm just suggesting in the future that chart, instead of assessed value, if it showed parcels or number of properties that have to be assessed, it's much more telling and much easier, I think, for everybody to grasp the workload that's associated. I'm not making a comment on
Right.
how much there isn't, but on the efficacy of people understanding the point you're trying to make about how much work is involved. And you're right about home sales and avocados. I have a family member that put a house on the market on Friday, toured it on Saturday, and sold it on Sunday.
Yep.
And that was not at all unusual.
No.
Um,
We're seeing bidding. We're definitely seeing, more than one offer coming in, and the prices are going higher than what they're even were listing for.
Right. And then the last thing I want to add, that it came as new information to me. This is in a public building, a private building. It is inside.
It's an agricultural building inside, and that is what you'd mentioned that you may want to attend last week at the meeting.
Okay.
That's the same information.
All right. Well, then I simply forgot, and I
Yeah.
apologize. Would you take into account or perhaps consult with our legal counsel before that meeting about holding a meeting of that nature in that place? And then I'm not suggesting that there's anything improper about it, but I'd like you to have firsthand expert advice as to what it takes to do that lawfully, so that you don't find yourself in any kind of a difficult position. It's just a friendly recommendation.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
Simple enough to do.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, with that, I'll have a couple questions, and since the mic is closest to Nikki, I'd like to ask about you made mention about houses when they're built by highways, and the noise factor could have an effect on the tax rate. We have houses out on Fosterwell Road where there's a settling pond for all the processing plants. Have you had any requests there for tax reevaluation on those properties due to the smell that they're having to deal with during the summer?
Yeah, I'm not sure why we were looking at it. It was under our previous assessor, so I'm not sure if it came from an actual request from a taxpayer, but we did a study on it and some of those do have adjustments on them.
Oh, they do?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then for Piper, you mentioned nurseries. Now, nurseries, what's the status on a nursery of an orchard that's growing their own nursery product? Is that also then exempt? Or
No,
out?
if they're a commercial business, they're not eligible for open space.
They're not. So
No. If
but-
they are growing it on another parcel.
Yeah.
That.
for their own orchard, then they are?
Then that parcel can be in the open space program,
Oh, okay.
the one that's growing the plant.
Because we do have a lot of nurseries out
But the
there. I know
nursery
that.
itself, no.
Now, if they grow and they sell to other orchards, then they're not open space?
No.
Okay. Last question is, under the historical building status, if you go for 10 years exempt taxes, is that also pushed onto the other taxpayers to make up that difference?
Any exemption is
Any
a
exemption.
shift.
So
Any
this-
exemption, when they talk about upping the senior citizen program or allowing more, we can deduct prescriptions. They're talking about allowing us to deduct medical bills. That's not been approved, but if it
Okay.
does, that just gets more people in the program. It's another shift to other taxpayers.
So if you have an historical building and you put in for a 10-year tax-free, then you're shifting that taxes to the other people. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all my questions.
And I might clarify, just to let you know, we have a good 10% of our senior population in that program right now in this county.
And honestly, those 10% of those seniors, they've been out there paying taxes their whole life.
They deserve it.
They deserve it.
They
You're darn
deserve
right
it. I'd
they
like to see more come in and find out or call and find out whether they're eligible.
do. Thank you,
I
John.
have no problem with that at all. I'd love to take those calls.
Thank you. All righty, with that.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I
Yeah,
ask a
go
couple
ahead.
of questions? Thank you. My first question is probably for Nikki. can you help me understand what, and it's kind of for the public, I think I know the answer, but for those listening, what is the triggering event that increases the assessed value of a property when an improvement is made? With COVID, a lot of people were buying lumber at Lowe's and doing home repair projects,
Right.
building porches or finishing basements or whatever it is. Is it when they get their building permit, or is it when the project is completed? What is the timing of that event that makes a change in their assessed value?
That's a great question. So under RCW state statute, we are required to go out when something was permitted or should have been permitted. So that's where that 6-year inspection cycle, where we're there physically inspecting the property at least every 6 years. If we receive a permit for it, we're out there annually. We're going to assess it. The cutoff per year is July 31st of each year. So at its percent complete on July 31st, that's what they're taxed on for that year. The remainder will be picked up the following year. If it's something that we just discover, it's called discovery, someone added something, we add it in the year that it was. If we know that it was new construction, it goes into the new construction pool. If not, it just gets added as regular assessment value as discovery. So if something is permitted, it's annually. If it's not permitted but should have been, it's whenever it's discovered. Does
Great.
that help?
Yeah, exactly. For procrastinators like me who might get a permit but not actually build the project, is there any increased assessed value for that?
Absolutely not. No, that's why that physical inspection is so important, to actually get out and look at what was added or not added.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. That answers my question. And I think my understanding was correct. And then the other question probably for Piper is, we've talked a lot about these shifts in those programs. Every year, this board talks at length about our county road shift, which functionally is kind of the same thing. But that is a shift that this board really has control over. All these other shifts are defined specifically by state statute. This board really doesn't have any latitude in whether they apply it to an individual taxpayer or not, or a group of taxpayers.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead,
When,
Mike.
when you move a piece of property out of open spaces and you have to pay the back taxes, how far back do those taxes go?
It's the current year plus 7 back years.
Okay.
So, and it can get quite spendy depending
Sure.
on where it's at. And some of them, it's very little because we remove it as what it was taxed. So if they did a short plat and pulled off 5 acres of the corner of a circle and it was clear out in the North County and it was classed as unfarmable, say class 6 ground, which means it's rocky, it has very little difference in value between open space and market. Open space might be 500 an acre and market might be 500 an acre and open space is 100 an acre. We're actually only going to take that land class and remove that much acres.
Okay.
So we're not going to call it the highest farmland because it wasn't class 1, 2, or 3.
Thank you.
And as long as it's been in at least 10 years, it avoids the penalty phase amount, which is 20%. There's a 20 on top of the tax, correct.
So you made an interesting statement about nurseries and trees and whether you're growing them for your own orchard or to sell to others. Is there a direct parallel there to, say, a dairy, where if you're raising animals for future dairy production and maybe you sell those to some other dairy, does that put you at risk under open space if you're raising those animals for possible sale to other dairies?
Dairies they're a commercial business, so they're not allowed to
You're
be in open space.
completely not allowed at all? Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. With that, we're closing in on 10 o'clock, and I know we got an executive session at 10. Correct, Keith? So I'd like to thank you very much for an incredible, excellent presentation.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to the same presentation out there in that barn. A lot of
Yes,
farmers are looking forward to it
We have a
too.
good presentation prepared for that. It'll be a great benefit.
And hopefully it won't be just a one-time thing. We need to move it around the county a little bit and
That's our intention, is to spread it around.
get
Do
everybody
more.
up to date.
I truly believe that we need to keep the information and flowing and you know, everybody's a lot better off if they know what's really what is.
Yes,
Yeah, a
thank
lot
you.
better off.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming in today. I really do appreciate hearing from the office.
Thank you, Rocky.
I think in the time I've been here, there's only been 3 or 4 departments that have come in and done this. So I agree. Good on you for coming and educating on what you do.
Anytime.
Maybe it'll set an example for some other departments that sometimes are a little frustrated with us for our seeming lack of understanding of what they do. Well, one of the solutions is come tell us.
It'll probably be the opposite. You'll probably get tired of seeing me rather than inviting me, sir. So, thank you.
All righty, with that, Keith, I guess I'll have you call the executive session, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm glad to do that. It looks like we have a couple members of the public. I don't have anybody on the phone,
Nobody.
but I don't know if you wanted to listen to public comment before we went into executive session.
Well, that's the thing. At 10 o'clock, I understand that Mr.
Mr.
Safari is on a tight
available.
schedule.
Yeah.
So
We can go
just
ahead. and
before
call
public comment, oh, I guess we got public comment first. If there's any public comment, is there anybody on the phone?
No.
Nobody on the phone? Anybody with public comment?
Comment about this or just in general?
Just in general?
Yeah, I do.
Please come forward. Grab the chair right there by the mic.
Thank you, commissioners, for listening. I'm Case Vandermeulen, have the feedlot conditional use permit. And I'd like to know what is happening with that because I haven't heard anything. I did talk to Derek here last week, and I left a message yesterday, and I just kind of wondering what's going on with it.
Keith,
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
what's going on with the cup permit out there with
Oh.
the dairy?
Yeah, I know they're working on making the modifications that they need to, but they haven't brought it back before this board for a hearing yet. So I think that's the next step, and I think they're close, but I can't tell you if it's how soon that is.
So this has been 2 weeks. We're going to be 3 weeks next week, and it's a night meeting. Have you been in contact with Derek to see
Yeah.
where we're at on this?
Yeah, in fact, I just got an email from him a few minutes ago. There's a question regarding the SEPA and whether it should have been included in the Cooley Flats Dairy, not just the feedlot as submitted in process. So they're awaiting a response from the Department of Ecology. State Department of Ecology.
And the question was what? If
The CUP should have been included in the entirety of the Cooley Flats Dairy CUP, as I understand it, not just the feedlot as it was submitted. I'd be happy to visit with you offline about this
okay,
after the meeting today.
I'd like that because when I was talked to Derek Bratton last week, not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but it's almost was a little accusatory that I did something wrong. And I don't believe I did anything wrong. And just was a little frustrated with it. So
Sure.
anyway, that's why I'm here on what is going on. And I've been,
Looks
Yeah.
like you were included on this email, so and he just sent it within the last 15 minutes. So
okay, Okay.
you'll have that email at least, but yeah, we'll be glad to follow up with you and
okay,
answer your questions.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Before we get started here with public comment, I want to be present when you go to your administrative about the guard shack or the shack you talked about.
Can I just text you when we're getting close to that?
Well, here's the problem, okay, is I have a feeling you're going to get into a longer time period. I'll wait until I can wait till the last minute, but if I'm not here, when you open back up, I would request that I be present on both of those administrative topics. And I will not be here next week, so if today we might want to extend it out into the next regular.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, I'm requesting a executive session. Sean, do you have an estimated time? It's 40, an hour? All right. This is requested under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, to discuss with legal counsel matters relating to agency enforcement actions, litigation, or potential litigation. I would ask that the prosecuting attorney, Jen Johnson, the chief civil deputy, John Sfarley, our contract attorney, members of the board, myself, be allowed to participate in that session.
And Keith, I'm on the phone. I don't know if other people are also still calling in. Should I
Okay, we're coming out of executive session with no decisions being made, and we're on to the office business. I believe we have one voucher today.
We have fund expenditures. I move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $219,901.76 as presented. And note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And takes us down to the consent agenda, which we have 7 items.
Ready to set this phone up?
Welcome. If you are the meeting host,
We have a motion on the 7 consent items.
Move to approve consent agenda as presented, 7 items.
Second that.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, Keith, we're down to administration office business.
I've sent a note to the sheriff. He wanted to be here for these 2 items of discussion.
Okay, while we're waiting for the sheriff to show up, may I ask a couple? First, on the ordinance at Grant County, have you had a chance to look that over?
Yes, it's on the controlled substance ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, they are making some changes to that language in Grant County. They have not approved it yet.
Okay,
And there are a number of other counties that are looking at
Considering.
this, but they're waiting on some additional guidance from, or some action from the state legislature, which is considering how this will impact counties. Like I said, I know the sheriff wanted to participate, but Sean
also in that too. And then Sean wanted to say something on that?
I can certainly do that. I prefer to wait for the sheriff, since this is a topic I think he's brought up before.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's definitely some need for conversation on it before.
And then the other thing that would deal with the sheriff too would be, and I've had several constituents in the county, so we might keep this for the sheriff too. So there'll actually be 4 items. And I hate using the word, but the sanctuary Second Amendment status. Have we given any thought to declare in Franklin County sanctuary Second Amendment status for our constituents here?
We have not brought a proposal forward to do that.
Something to consider.
Yeah.
Being that there's a whole bunch of gun laws going to be enacted here in this state and across the nation. So that's something else to ask the sheriff about when he shows.
I got a note here from the sheriff that he's now engaged in another meeting, he's unavailable. So my recommendation would be to propose we
Next meeting?
postpone these. He did also say he's out, I didn't say he's out of town, he's just unavailable next week
So
for the
be-
night meeting, so it'll be 2 weeks from today. These are not issues that I think are so time sensitive that we couldn't do that, but
Right. So
That
now
might
we
be the
would
best.
have 4, the ordinance, the guard, or actually 3, the guardhouse, and then the sanctuary status. Those 3 items for the sheriff at his earliest convenience at the next meeting, which would be 2 weeks.
correct.
Sean, did you want to weigh in on?
I just wanted to give the board an update, at least from my perspective. I recognize I want to be working with the sheriff on this. There is a concern, as what has been discussed previously, the State v. Blake decision. That was a Supreme Court case that essentially threw out the personal use of any controlled substance statute because it lacked the word knowingly. So essentially, the court said that that creates a strict liability, that you don't have to prove any kind of mens rea or mental state or criminal intent. It was simply if someone is found in possession of some kind of, whether it be cocaine, methamphetamine, you simply just had to show, hey, they had it on their person. It shifted the burden of proof to the defendant. They could raise what they called an affirmative defense, Ironically, we have had cases like this where someone says, well, those weren't my pants. So literally that was the facts of the case that went up to the state Supreme Court, the not my pants defense. Most of the cases that we have evidence that shows clearly that the person had knowledge, but the statute did not have that word. So there's been various proposals at the state level to try to amend the statute. Some amendments have been as simple as simply adding the word knowingly. That does not seem to be gaining the traction. I think the biggest bill that has the best opportunity for passage, it's definitely not many of our first choices as prosecutors, but that's Senator Dingra's bill, which is 5476 in Olympia right now. And so that bill was set for public hearing, I believe, today, but that got continued. It sounds like it's still going to hearing. And that's certainly a concern I would have from the legal standpoint of adopting an ordinance if the state, already the state has, there's a state law that basically grants the state preemption. Essentially, the state has the sole authority to make laws over the Controlled Substance Act. So there's a concern there of any county engaging in that if the state hasn't taken clear direction. There's word that we've heard that the state at a minimum will take action to make it very clear that states or cities and counties or other municipalities cannot pass their own drug laws in the interim because there's a concern of
And
creating.
Sean, I've seen draft bills where it actually it declares null and void any ordinances that have already been passed. So it isn't just prospective, it's retro as well.
And that's the concern of the language, and that's from, just dropped it off here, but I think it's 695608. That's the state preemption bill as to controlled substances. And it has language in there that's concerning, even in our discussions with WAPA, of if we do something like that, there's a question of, does that bring on liability to our individual officers? If they go out and arrest somebody on a state or a county ordinance, when the state, arguably, someone could make the argument that by the state's inaction, they have not authorized or changed that preemption language to authorize counties or cities, municipalities to engage in passing their own ordinances for this area. We can do things that are consistent with the state law, but because we have this void, there's at least a concern of doing anything, at least until the session is over. And that's one of the things that I'm looking at, so that if the state does not take action and it leaves us a window, I definitely would not want to wait a year. I said my biggest concern is, from a prosecution standpoint, is we have kids right now that are prohibited. If you're under 21, you can't drink beer and you can't have cigarettes, but you could have methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and who knows what other list of dangerous substances. So that's extremely concerning, especially in light of the adolescent brain studies that oftentimes is presented from people trying to change our state statutes, extending juvenile jurisdiction from 18 all the way up to 21. The arguments are that, hey, these developing minds, they need the extra protection from the state. In other words, we need to treat them as juveniles even into their early 20s, as some studies have suggested, because the brain hasn't fully developed.
That same mind can man an M60 machine gun in Afghanistan.
And I totally understand that argument, but to me, if you're saying that those juvenile minds need the extra protection, then why would you not, in the interest of protecting our youth in this state, why would you not pass a bill at least addressing the juvenile issues? So that's what this state proposed statute does. It does create a personal use exemption, so that would be similar to the limits that were recently adopted in Oregon. Neither myself nor, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I'm not in favor of that, because what I've seen, if we don't have some kind of, and I've heard from basically heart-torn parents that have reached out to me with cases where their kids are suffering from drug addiction. If they don't have jail, if they don't have prison hanging over their head, there's not that basically enticement to get them into treatment. Hopefully they learn by participating in treatment, that's a benefit for them. But many people we've seen throughout, I've heard from the Kittitas County prosecutor and several others, once this State versus Blake decision came out, drug court participation dropped about 60%. So people that had that initiative or the incentive to complete treatment, go through that, even if it was only going to keep them sober for a year to a year and a half, up to 2 years, as most drug court and programs offer, that incentive was removed. And so now you have people that are left without the treatment that's provided from our drug courts, And we've seen it, certainly seen a reduction in our own drug courts. We've tried to allow those that were getting close to graduation to still follow up, and thank goodness that they wanted to just see it to the end. But that's the reality. And that's the sad thing that I think has happened in our state, is that without concern for youth and for the people that need that incentive to get into treatment and counseling, there's almost a fantasy being discussed in Olympia that if we just decriminalize it, people will go ahead to these treatment centers. And the reality is that will not be the case. And that's what I'm concerned about. We'll see, just like we did when marijuana was legalized, you see an increase of polysubstance DUI. So in other words, you have a substance out there that's was a little bit more difficult to detect. And now people would smoke a joint or whatnot, get in a car and drive impaired. And they've showed that being under THC, especially the THC levels of our marijuana that's now, we're not talking Woodstock grade marijuana back from the 60s. We're talking very high potency marijuana that has psychedelic properties. And certainly people under that influence should not be driving. And so anyway, not to get into a long conversation, but that's some of the things that we're contemplating of trying to figure out as the county's legal authority, of trying to come up with a solution that keeps us on solid legal ground, doesn't jeopardize our law enforcement persons for any kind of liability issues if we did our own thing and then we get challenged under the state preemption, which state preemption already exists. There's some kind of argument, and that's why you have ongoing discussions. I've been in discussions with all these counties and some of the municipalities that are contemplating it, talking with the city of Pasco legal counsel as well, trying to figure out what can we do in the interim. And I unfortunately, I think the best bet from a legal standpoint is simply to wait until the legislature has an opportunity to fix this. There's several bills that are proposed, some more likely to get its day, and we're hopeful that something will be passed, even though it might not be, as with most legislation, we're not going to get everything that I want or probably this board would like, but if we could get something that's a lot closer to it and puts us on solid ground. The other part of it that's important is the LFO. That's the legal financial obligation piece that we have to now refund, as the Supreme Court, without thought, basically tossed out all simple possession cases dating back to the statute's inception back to 1971. So we're going to have to create this mechanism. That's what's tagged my office right now. We're going through figuring out who's on warrant status, who's serving time in prison. We're going to have to do resentencings, because now if those cases are stricken from their offender score, that entitles those defendants to resentencing. So we're in the process of doing that. My staff did a great job of pulling all that data and getting those things filed in a fairly quick manner, because that minimizes our risk and exposure by getting those people that were currently in custody in our local jail, also dealing with people that are at DOC. We're working on those individuals, as well as trying to get rid of the numerous warrants that are pending and outstanding to make sure that they don't get picked up if they're in another state, if they're only wanted on that case. What complicates this is when people have been charged with controlled substance, but they've also been charged with other crimes that are still perfectly valid. We still have to look at, is there going to be a proportion of LFO fees that needs to be reimbursed? Because frankly, as our county clerk is collecting fees on our statutes for the court, they basically send all that money off to the state, and then the state divvies it out to the respective county or municipalities. So that's a complicated process. So this current bill attempts to resolve that and create a collection mechanism and a reimbursement. So I think that's something that's going to be helpful for us, because right now we're telling individuals, yes, you're going to be entitled to reimbursement from the state. We don't know how that's going to look. The state's in the process of trying to get that sorted out. So we're hopeful that some bill is going to address that, as well as trying to come up with a stately Blake fix for that. So anyway, didn't want to take up too much time, but I saw that the statute was one thing, or the proposed ordinance is one discussion of it. I hadn't had an opportunity to share with you the other issues that are going on surrounding that. So I thought it's important for you to know, because obviously there's a big concern when you hear, fines, every case approximately $1,200 up to $1,800, depending on the issue, that would have to be reimbursed. And we're trying to wait to hear from the state on how they're planning to disseminate those funds and create that reimbursement mechanism. So,
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. Keith, we're to public comment. Is there anybody
No
on the
callers,
phone?
right? No one on the phone.
Any public comment? Yes, we have one here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rocky, I wanted to thank you for what you had to say about having maybe departments come and give a report on what they do and how they do it. I think that the Assessor's Department, that presentation they gave was very informative for me. I learned stuff that I'd never heard before, and so I think that'd be really neat to continue to do that. So commend you for making that recommendation, and would encourage you guys to continue to do that. And it's sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and it's a good way to learn those things. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, with that, is there any other business?
Do have a request for an additional executive session under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, litigation or potential litigation, up to 30 minutes. Asked that prosecuting attorney and chief civil deputy, the board, myself, be allowed to participate in that. I believe Jen is calling in as we speak. I think 30 minutes ought to be sufficient.
Commissioner Peck to come back.
Get your scours problem taken care of with your calves. We have come out of executive session with no decisions being made. We're in a 5-minute recess, which we will continue the meeting as soon as Commissioner Peck reappears. Okay, we are back in session after a 5-minute recess. No decisions being made in the executive session. Is there any other good of the board business to be done? Oh, there is a night meeting scheduled for next week. I'd like to read this here if I can find it. April 6th, there will be a commissioner meeting at 7 p.m. here at the courthouse. Seating is limited to 43 in-person attendance due to COVID restrictions. It'll be held in the historic courtroom on the 3rd floor. Overflow will be in the foyer. We encourage members of the public to join us electronically by the live stream ATV capture all link on Franklin County website. A sign-in list for public comment will be available so that those who are attending in the overflow area will have the opportunity to speak. So that's next week, April 6th at 7 p.m. here at the courthouse.
I believe the overflow for that meeting is the historic courtroom on the 3rd floor, not the foyer of the courthouse.
So our meeting will be in the chamber? Oh, because the last time we talked, we were going to have the meeting in the courtroom. So it is it's in the commissioner chamber, and the overflow will be in the courtroom.
Just to confirm, the 43 is not for this room, that's a combination of the courtroom and this room.
Correct, it's a combined.
All right, the details are on today's agenda, which is posted on the website,
Yeah.
last item.
I just didn't want people thinking that you could have 43 in here, so it's a little tight.
Okay, is there any other business for the board?
Mr. Sant, do we have any other executive session business that we need to accomplish today?
Not that I'm aware.
Could I? I'm going to ask for another 20 minutes of executive session.
I'll ask for that under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I. And I would ask that Sean and Jen be available, the clerk, myself, and the members of the board.
We are going to go in another 20-minute executive session.
And Keith, I'm still on the main line. I don't know if anybody else is as well. And if
decisions being made. Is there any other further business for the board? Hearing none, we are adjourned.